Yeah, so for some nutrients, you may just be, there can be several different ways that you might need more nutrient. Either you're not good at absorbing it, or you're not good at actually incorporating that nutrient in your biochemistry, or you're not good at storing it. So for example, with iron, this is quite a common one. You get the people who are very susceptible to anemia, and you do see it running in families because it is strongly genetic. And then there are people that actually need to be careful of having too much iron. So there are a few genes that play here, and one of them is how well you absorb iron. So I have the hemochromatosis gene, which means I'm very good at absorbing iron, probably too good. So I don't supplement iron too much. And actually a plant-based diet is better for me in that respect. But then a lot of people have a gene which means they can't store iron very well. They can absorb it, but then they can't store it in their cells as ferritin. So then they need to be making sure they're getting enough iron every day. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to supplement, but some people might need to supplement if you're really finding it hard to get enough iron.
Welcome back, friends, to the Plant Fueled podcast. Another week has gone by, which means another episode is here. I am, as always, your host and plant-based nutritionist, Callum Weir. Today's show, we delve into genetics with Ellie Busby. Ellie is a genetics nutritionist and the founder of Vojo Health, the company in which takes your DNA, looks into your genetics to give you an in-depth breakdown on how your body optimizes nutrients, to give you a complete health analysis rundown on how to tailor your diet to your body's needs. As we delve into our genes, we discuss how our body deals with certain nutrients, why it's harder for some of us to absorb some of the essentials such as iron and omega-3, how a genetic predisposition doesn't necessarily have to be your destiny, and how we should learn to work with our genes and not against them. This episode really opens your eyes and allows us to see that your DNA, your genes, and your nutrition are absolutely vital when it all comes together. So let's sit back and let's dive in. Ellie, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you, Callum. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. It's been a great evening. Yeah, it's been nice. So you are a genetics nutritionist, which I didn't know until very recently after meeting you existed. If anything, I just thought, your genes were, your blonde hair, your blue eyes, something that you may have got from your parents, but I had no idea that genes and nutrition came hand in hand.
Oh my God, yes. And it's like, it's a bi-directional relationship as well. So your genes can affect what nutrients you need more of and which foods can work for you. But on the other hand, your food and your nutrients can also affect your genes. So it's a really kind of cool relationship. And, I didn't know about it either until I was studying nutrition. I had a genetic test and I personalized my diet to my genes. And oh my God, like my life changed from that moment. So this is something I really want many more people to know about.
There's an actual word for the next. It's not just nutrition gene expert, is it? There is a word. I've got it, but I can't pronounce it whatsoever. I've tried, and even when you type in on, when you go onto Google and you translate it and it then tells you how to say it, it also doesn't give you an exact.
So yes, the way that your genes affect your nutrition is called nutrigenetics, and the way that your food affects your genes is nutrigenomics. Quite similar words, but they are a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. That very, very confusing as well. If you're just an outsider looking into this, you're just kind of like, oh, this is just another word that I have no idea what it means. So obviously you're on a plant-based diet completely. So were you on a plant-based diet before learning about genes, or were you learning about genes and being like, oh, I need to tailor now my diet towards what I've learned? Or was it, which way around was it?
Well, I've been vegan for about 10 years, and I was one of those people in the first few years that, I was like, this is great. This is amazing. It's so easy. Like, why doesn't everybody do it? Everybody should go vegan right now. I was that really annoying person you probably didn't want to be around. And that was until like 5 years in, when suddenly I started experiencing all of these health problems that I thought were kind of myths, like my hair started falling out. I had brain fog all the time. I was getting running injuries a lot. Like my joints were hurting. I was like, wow, okay, I am not old enough for this. And I was like, maybe it's my vegan diet, but I just don't want to, I can't go back. I just can't.
You don't want to admit your diet either. That's the thing.
Yeah, right. And lots of other people, I knew lots of people who have been vegan for years longer than me, and they were still fine. So I was like, well, and there's also lots of people that struggle as well. But I was like, there's something going on here. And we do know that everyone is different. There's not one diet that suits everybody. We know that for a fact. And I studied nutrition. I had the DNA test, and this is when I learned about DNA. So it was about 5 years into a vegan diet. And then when I got the results, it changed my whole diet. It means I'm still vegan today, which is great news for everyone, including the animals and the planet. So,
Awesome. Because that's the thing. I think in my head, I assumed that it would have been that you went into nutrition, genetics, and been like, oh, this doesn't work for me, so I need to have my lifestyle to how it works. And I assumed that's how you kind of went down that route. But to hear it's the other way around as well. It's great that you've actually taken that time to realize that your diet at that point wasn't great, things were happening, and then taking your symptoms, learning from DNA, and just kind of moving with how your body works and finding out why it is your body needs this, what's working for you, what's not working for you, and kind of tailoring those exact nutrients for your body. Which, for one, I didn't realize that certain nutrients won't work the same for everybody. In my eyes, at first, I thought it was a one size fits all. So when it came to kind of omegas, converting over into new another category, I thought that's the same with everybody, but then finding out very much so that some people are slower converters, some people are faster converters, some I assume can't convert at all.
Everybody converts a little bit, but you're totally right. Within veganism or a plant-based world, there's two really band camps in this area. There's the people who say you can't convert enough, you need to supplement DHA, otherwise you're not getting enough omega-3 into your brain, even if you eat chia seeds all day. And then there are the people that say DHA is a waste of money, you don't need to supplement this stuff, you can just eat 1.5 or 1 tablespoon of flax seeds a day and you're getting all the omega-3 you need. And it's super confusing, right? It's so confusing having all this conflicting advice, because you're like, okay, there must be an answer, and there is. The answer is that you are unique, and figuring out which one works for you, because they're both right, is super important.
Yeah, so you could literally be listening to 2 different people coming with very conflicting advice, and no one's really knowing who to listen to. And I get that from, especially when for me for my business, people have been like, oh, is a plant-based diet suitable? Should I go back to meat? And it's contradicting advice everywhere. And I assume that's very much the same until you have to kind of delve a bit deeper past what people are saying and actually into the science, especially when it comes to your DNA. Because that for me, when learning nutrition, DNA was never once mentioned. It's just kind of one size fits all. It's the same for everybody. If you do this right, if you do this wrong, you're going to come into these difficulties. You're not going to come into these difficulties. And it is when these subjects are brought up, they're not taught well at all.
I totally agree. And there's a problem in the industry as well. It's not, so when genetics first became popular, or these at-home DNA testing kits first became popular, you can read some reviews online of people that tested a few different ones from different companies and then compared the results. And they're like, but the results are different. This is obviously a load of rubbish, whatever. And it's a shame, because, there is so much evidence for some genes and how they affect your nutrient needs. But companies can pretty much do what they want. So I investigated some of these companies. I'm not going to name any names, but some of them were giving diet and lifestyle advice based on animal studies. And that is not okay, because, you know, animal studies, well, aside from the ethical issues, it's really not, you can't base any recommendations for humans on these studies, because animals are totally different. Like a rabbit or a rat is going to react totally differently to the same food you'd give a human. So they're okay studies for starting other scientific studies, for starting human studies, apart from the ethical issues. But other than that, that's where it ends, you know? So it's worrying that some of these companies get away with this. But yeah, that's like, that's going to be something that happens in the very near future, that these results are going to be standardized, that there's going to be some sort of certification for these sorts of tests. And I hope that happens soon.
That's the thing, because whenever I do, I look into studies, especially when it comes to animal studies, because there's a lot of past studies. And yes, I guess at some points there was a need-ish for it. Nowadays, not at all. But back then, when everything was being formed, science was kind of just evolving. But it does seem that everything was tested on animals beforehand, which doesn't always correlate to a human, because obviously we are very, very different species. So it does confuse me how these studies even get into like the kind of limelight when, like, let's say a mouse and me are two very different people.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if you look at the doses or the amounts that these animals are being given, it's usually a lot for their size and their weight. So you just can't translate this stuff to humans.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it does come to genetics, so obviously whenever you go to a doctor or something, or someone's died in the family of like bowel cancer, for instance, so then the whole family has to kind of go get tested. I know this happened for me. I had to go get a colonoscopy for no apparent reason at all, because I got told that this runs in the family. And I'm guessing, obviously, if you do have, you can have a predisposition to getting some of these unlikely outcomes, such as cancers, such as bowel disease, such as heart attacks. But obviously, it has to come down to lifestyle as well. It can't just be down to genetics of what people are doing. Because obviously, like, I'm not too sure on the actual science behind this. I know I've read studies, I've seen studies where it's kind of been like your genetics are 20% of your or what the outcome can be, and then the other 80% is very much kind of how you upregulate, how you downregulate your genes. So that way, let's say bowel cancer, for instance, does not have to be your destiny. It's just what you do in that time frame of being born to when you die, what happens within the body.
Yeah, of course, your genes are not your destiny. Okay, well, first we need to preface this with the fact that there are generally two types of genetic conditions. One is monogenic, which means that, you know, you only need a mutation in one gene and it causes the disease. Mm-hmm. So something like cystic fibrosis. This is like you only need one mutation and, you know, you have the disease. And in this case, genetics are like, you know, most of the cause. But most things like diabetes, like heart disease, like high cholesterol, like cancer, these are polygenic. So yeah, there are lots of genes involved, and it's not just your genes, you're right. It's so much to do with diet and lifestyle and how these change your genetic expression, but also how they just affect your body. And it's about, you know, it's like, it's important to know, in my opinion, it's so important to know whether you have these genes, because then you know, you have a better idea of how you can eat and live in accord, like alongside your genes, so that your genes aren't your destiny. You know, you don't, if you have the Alzheimer's gene, you don't have to get Alzheimer's disease. You can reduce your risk by doing the right things, like getting enough omega-3, like reducing your refined carbohydrate, like increasing your healthy fat intake. And these are all recommendations, you know, anyway. But knowing that you have the gene helps you to make those changes. And we do have evidence for that, that people are much more likely to make these changes in their lives if they know it's personal to them. So for example, I inherited the Alzheimer's gene from my dad, and he died from dementia, but he didn't know he had these genes. I know. And it's the science and the studies say that if you have this gene, you really need to be making these changes in your 30s and your 40s. You can't just start supplementing omega-3 when you're 70 and you already have Alzheimer's. It's not going to do anything. So yeah, it's super important to know what those changes are you can make.
Exactly, because that's the thing. Like after learning a lot about nutrition, obviously nobody wants heart disease, nobody wants any of these conditions. So now I kind of eat like I have the worst health in the world. So this is my way of thinking, is that if I eat like I am on the path to the worst health possible, and I'm trying to reverse it, that this is the only outcome for me. So mine is literally very much whole foods with your healthy fats, your grains, your good proteins, all this. That way, hopefully averting myself away from these kind of diseases that can come in the future. And hopefully with that information that I'm giving myself, learning and giving other people, it can obviously help people to achieve that too. But I will eat like I have the worst health in the world.
I mean, that's definitely a good route to take. I have found though that it is difficult to do everything. You have these lists of everything you should be eating or supplementing in a day, and it's like, how the hell am I supposed to get all of this in my stomach? So for me, I find it helpful to know where I need to focus. And it takes some of the trial and error out. It takes some of the ambiguity out. Actually what is most important for you, and everything else you can get in there when you need it. But it's like with supplements, you don't want to be, well, on one hand, you don't want to be spending money on supplements for nutrients you can get from food, as you know, but also you don't want to be spending money on supplements that you don't need, because you actually have lower needs for this nutrient. On the flip side, I do want to be spending my money on the supplements that I really do need. So
that's what I was going to want. With supplementation and your genes, obviously when we're getting it from food, I'm guessing there's probably a better absorption rate depending on who you are. So it's not going to be the same for everybody. But obviously with these, with a lot of these supplements as well, there is other added small little ingredients as well. So I don't know if that actually kind of diverts away your absorption by having, let's say, 5 other ingredients that you're not overly too sure what they are. They are just kind of, they're long words, nobody really knows. And then you've got like traces of, let's say, vitamin D. You've got traces of like, let's say, B12, and then a few other ingredients as well. Does this then hinder the absorption?
Yeah, so if you get cheaper supplements, there are additives and preservatives in them, which can have an effect not only on your health, but on the nutrients themselves. And it's different for all of them, but there are some common ones that I would generally avoid. But as well as that, you need to think about the forms of the supplements. You're totally right. Like some forms of supplements, like if you get a cheap magnesium, for example, magnesium citrate, not only is that going to cause you gut issues probably, but you don't actually absorb it very well. Like you're kind of wasting your money. So I would always recommend a much better absorbed form, which is magnesium bisglycinate. And not only is it better absorbed, it doesn't cause gut issues, it can cross your blood-brain barrier, which most forms of magnesium can't. Now, I don't recommend this to everybody. Like some people have higher needs for magnesium according to their genes, and it's these people who should really focus on this. But for most people, you don't actually need to supplement magnesium if you're eating a whole food, a really nutrient-dense diet.
I do see a lot of people supplementing a lot of different, supplements of all sorts, vitamins and minerals, when I feel like they're spending a lot of money for something they could very much sort with a few pieces of food. So such like people obviously supplementing vitamin C, when you could go pick up an orange. But when you're comparing whole foods to a supplement such like vitamin C, obviously we all know you should be, it's the better option to be taking the vitamin C for an orange. But in some cases, I'm guessing that obviously some people eat vitamin C, yet still have a deficiency or a lower intake of it. So is this something that genes play into?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Genes play into how much you need of vitamin C?
How much you actually get from, let's say, an orange as such, compared to a supplement, because people they eat an orange, they eat fruits, all these other kind of foods, yet still low in vitamin C, and then still get told to take a supplement. So I'm guessing, obviously, there must be some issues there with genetics.
Yeah, so for some nutrients, you may just be, there can be several different ways that you might need more nutrient. Either you're not good at absorbing it, or you're not good at actually incorporating that nutrient in your biochemistry, or you're not good at storing it. So for example, with iron, this is quite a common one. You get the people who are very susceptible to anemia, and you do see it running in families because it is strongly genetic. And then there are people that actually need to be careful of having too much iron. So there are a few genes that play here, and one of them is how well you absorb iron. So I have the hemochromatosis gene, which means I'm very good at absorbing iron, probably too good. So I don't supplement iron too much. And actually a plant-based diet is better for me in that respect. But then a lot of people have a gene which means they can't store iron very well. They can absorb it, but then they can't store it in their cells as ferritin. So then they need to be making sure they're getting enough iron every day. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to supplement, but some people might need to supplement if you're really finding it hard to get enough iron.
So obviously, talking about iron, this really comes into the subject of meat. Obviously, me and you both vegans, both on very plant-based diets. So genetic wise, is there any reason or any gene that would favor actually having meat in the diet? Not that we're looking to kind of promote having meat in the diet, but is there genetics that make you more favorable to maybe having some sort of kind of meat intake more than a plant-based intake on any nutrient?
It's hard to make it so categorical. So I wouldn't say that someone is on the whole more suited to a meat-based or a vegan diet. I would say that some people find being vegan much easier than others, whereas other people might suffer more with deficiencies and health issues. So your genes aren't a justification for what type of diet to follow. Yeah. They are a way to learn about your body and learn how to work with it. So yeah, you're right. I do hear people say they need to eat meat because of their genes, but I'm like, what? How does that make any sense? There's no like one gene that determines this. It's a lot of different genes, and it's more complicated than that. So it's like, okay, what areas do you need to focus on and work on? And that's the same with any diet. Having said that, there are, with some genes, I do actually recommend avoiding meat because it is worse for you. If you do have the hemochromatosis gene, like it runs in my family, you don't want to be eating red meat because we absorb iron too well. And that means, high ferritin stores are associated with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all sorts of problems. So actually, for some people, I do recommend don't eat meat because of these genes.
That's the thing, because I've known somebody for years, and he was on a completely plant-based diet, but yet told, I don't think, he didn't have any proof of this. He didn't go to doctors. He didn't have a gene sample or a DNA sample taken. I think it was more Google research, and the Google research was like, oh, you have certain genes that mean that you just can't be on a vegan diet altogether. So he went back, him and his kids, to all very much eating a very meat heavy diet of a lot of red meat. He's a big red meat eater, and I kind of like, you can't really go ahead and kind of diagnose yourself with this kind of thing from what somebody has seen online. And I think this is what a lot of people do is like being like, they will see something on Google, they type something in and be like, oh, this is down to so-and-so, when there's actually no evidence towards that, and their body is just kind of opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's a lot of very categorical advice out there, and it's tempting to follow it, but usually it's very inaccurate. At the same time, I do advocate experimenting and seeing what works for your body and seeing what feels good. Not that I would ever advocating eating meat for several reasons, but just figure out what works for you, and make these experiments on yourself. Actually, as we're on the subject of meat, there is a study that shows that people with a certain gene, the FTO gene, which actually means that if you have this gene, you tend to be more hungry, you tend to need, you tend to eat more, snack more, you tend to struggle with weight issues. And that's because it messes with your hunger hormones and you never really feel full. And studies show that people with this gene tend to eat more meat. There are less vegetarians or vegans with this gene. It makes sense because, you're getting a higher dose of protein on, or like easier sources of protein on a meat-based diet, whereas you may be getting less protein on a plant-based diet if you're new to it, for example. So that's one thing that might be at play here with your friend, especially. But it's no reason to eat meat. You can figure out how to feel satiated and get protein on a plant-based diet easily enough.
Exactly. Like it's one of those things that I've been drilling into him for the last however many years, that it's probably your protein intake, and it is probably something that you can replace, whether that be with a substitute of meat, or going for a whole foods option. So obviously kind of like concocting a dish full of like lentils, black beans inside like a chili or something like that, but won't have it at all. And I'm just like, so much wrong here. And you just, I want to explode. I know I need to keep my cool, because I don't want to be that guy either that's like, you know what, you need to go vegan. As much as I'd love to be, because I think everybody, everybody has, especially when they go vegan or plant-based, they become a bit of a preachy vegan at first, or very, very militant. And I know that happened for me for the first 6-7 months, till I realized I was probably losing more friends than making them.
Yeah, when that starts happening, you need to change something.
Yeah, and now it's fine. After a while, after I learned to kind of curb my anger in some other ways. So obviously, a lot of the listeners here are athletes. A lot of them bodybuilders as well, and there's a few people that listen to this podcast for weight loss. So when we go into a calorie deficit for weight loss, and obviously this is probably not going to be the same for everybody, because everybody has different requirements, but obviously it depends on the person. But is there people that are more susceptible to weight gain, even though they're consuming a lower quantity of food? So let's say they're in a calorie deficit, but still somehow manage to gain weight. Is there genes that obviously play into this?
That's an extremely interesting question. Usually genes, people might feel like they're eating less, but usually the genes are associated with actually a higher intake of calories, because a lot of these genes, they're related to your ghrelin and your leptin levels, which are your hunger and your satiety hormones. So when your ghrelin is high, you're hungry. When you eat and your leptin goes up, you stop eating. You're like, this is your signal that you're full and you need to stop eating. But there's a lot of genes that play around with these levels. And so if you have some of them, your leptin levels might not get as high as other people. So you don't realize that you should stop eating. And on top of that, there are some genes associated with going for more energy dense foods. So feeling more attracted to fatty foods, sugary foods. So it's difficult, because we know for a fact that there's a lot of underreporting when it comes to reporting energy intake. People forget that they had that chocolate bar. I mean, I do it as well. So, but it's very convenient that you forget about the bad foods that you ate throughout the day. So it is difficult to determine these sorts of things. But yeah, there's starting to become some, wait, that wasn't grammatically correct. There is a little bit of evidence that some of these genes are associated with your metabolism. So how readily you store fat and how easily you can burn it. Some people can burn fat a lot easier than others. So yes, there are a lot of genetic factors that play here that can change how you store weight and how you use the energy as well. And knowing what your tendencies are mean that you can kind of design your exercise routine or your like macronutrient balance around what is better for your metabolism.
That's the thing, like I hear a lot of people just being like, oh, this person just needs to go into a calorie deficit and they'll be fine, they're going to lose weight. But for me, especially working with clients, a calorie deficit sometimes just isn't enough to get them to lose weight straight away. And then you get these fitness experts online that are just being like, oh, if you just drop 400, 500 calories and then get into a low calorie deficit, that you're going to lose weight. And yes, I think on any diet, if you're going to go into a very low calorie deficit, then you're going to lose weight. But surely that's playing around with some inner structure which isn't going to be good for you. Because I've met many people that have been told to go on 1,200 calorie diets, and yes, they're losing weight. Yes, they had no energy whatsoever. But obviously, if you're going that low, does this then affect your genes in any way?
I don't know if it affects your genes, but it would definitely affect your metabolism. So if you're cutting your calorie intake this much, your body is going to go into survival mode and it's going to do everything it can to not let go of any more calories, so your metabolism slows right down, and this makes it incredibly unsustainable. So think about it, you're never going to get through the rest of your life eating 1,200 calories. Not only is it going to be hard on your energy levels, you are going to have health impacts later in life from depriving yourself of the nutrients you need. But then when you start eating more again, and people always start eating more again, you're going to store more fat. You're going to start gaining weight even more than you did before because you're in survival mode. Your body is like, yes, there's food. Let's store it for later when we're in a famine again. So yeah, I mean, it never works. And I think it's something that we're starting to come around to, that we're starting to understand, that dieting does not work and is not sustainable.
That's the thing, especially with people I work with. I hate the fact that people wanted to call it a diet because it's not sustainable and it's an industry marketed regime, basically. And it's weird that when you start to eat a healthier diet, it's then constituted as you are on a diet, when it's just I'm just eating healthier for my own benefit, how I feel, it's going to make me feel great. But yet when someone sees me with like a Buddha bowl, they've been like, oh, you're on a diet? I'm like, no, I'm just eating because I want to feel great. Like I don't want to be eating a load of junk food, because junk food has been so cleverly marketed that when you do eat something healthy, you're then automatically on a diet. Whereas obviously diets don't mean anything. A diet is the way someone eats on a day-to-day basis. So obviously me being a vegan, I'm on a vegan diet, but that doesn't mean if I eat some lettuce now, I'm dieting. And such a giant confusion throughout the industry.
Oh my God, I am so sad that the word diet has been hijacked in this way. It's so annoying.
That's the thing, but people were like, oh, you're vegan now. Is this for weight loss? No, it's just how I want to eat. Like I just don't want to cause harm anymore. But you're not eating this pizza. I'm like, I don't want to. I just want to eat some quinoa. I want to eat some like brown rice. And they're like, is it for weight loss? No. And it is frustrating. And I think where the industry has taken over, it has played with people's minds as well. So it's trying to get people out of that consistent feeling that they are there for a specific reason, that specific reason being to lose weight.
Yeah.
So obviously talking about weight loss and junk food, I'm guessing this must play a huge factor in some way, shape, or form in obviously in your body with down regulating and up regulating your genes, because there is so much crap in a lot of these foods, whether this be a vegan diet, whether this be a meat diet, any of these kind of very overly processed foods, we know deep down aren't good for our bodies as much as we consume them. But they must be doing something else within the body, because obviously we know they cause obesity, we know they cause type 2 diabetes, they can like cause heart disease, high cholesterol, all these different bits and pieces. So there's something else going on within the body with these foods. So what's going on there with the gene wires?
So the way that foods affect genetic expression like that is quite complicated, because there are quite a lot of components to some junk food. We're not just breaking it down to nutrients or single ingredients. So it is quite a complicated topic. And there are some associations, like, that if you have certain genes in your fatty acid metabolism, then, for example, eating a lot of omega-6 is more associated with weight gain for you than other people. So, we have some associations, but it's kind of difficult to work with. And it's like, we know that junk food isn't good for us. And, some people can handle it more than others, depending on their genes. And some people will have a much harder time with junk food. Like, for example, some people will have, will get spots or pimples when they eat junk food, or some people will become more inflamed and have inflammatory symptoms like joint pain. And this is usually down to too much omega-6. And as we all know, omega-6 is incredibly easy to get too much of if you're eating junk food. So you do kind of get in a vicious cycle with these fats in your genes if you're not suited to them. But usually it's quite easy to see if you're not suited. Like, you have those symptoms, and but on the other hand, it's not always easy to see what the foods are that are causing it.
Absolutely.
But I mostly always say, just if you're having issues, then try removing some junk food from your diet and replacing it with whole foods. You don't need a DNA test to know that's, or to try that out and see what the benefits of that are going to be.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to protein, the big question that every vegan gets. And we know that we can get protein. It's very well established now that we can get the amount of protein we need on a plant-based diet. But when protein and genes come together, is there then, obviously we know absorption of some nutrients are, like, depending on your body, can be highly absorbed or a lot lower absorbed. So when it comes to protein, are there different types of genes that allow higher protein absorption, and obviously genes that deflect a lot of protein absorption from certain foods as such?
There are no genes that I know of that change your protein absorption. There are genes that you may find that you need more protein to feel satiated. But in terms of protein absorption, generally, I wouldn't say that there's that much difference.
Okay, so it's more when it comes down to like minerals, vitamins as such, and not like the higher macro, the micros and the macros.
Usually with macronutrients, it's about how your body deals with them. So there are genes associated with blood sugar imbalance, a higher risk of diabetes if you're eating too many refined carbs, with a higher risk of high cholesterol with some types of food, with a higher risk of other disorders from having too much or too little refined sugars or fats in your diet. But yeah, it's usually about how your body deals with it, not with the absorption of these foods, whereas with some nutrients, it's about absorption. But we also have to consider your microbiome in this. I mean, your gut plays a huge part in how well you can metabolize, break down, and absorb a lot of macronutrients. So, you know, it's there was a study in twins actually that looked at this, and they found that for blood sugar balance, your genes played a big part. But for your fats, like your triglycerides in your blood, how they varied, that was more down to your microbiome. So that was kind of interesting, but there was no difference in protein. It was really about the fats and the sugars.
That's one thing I have seen in the past where people are like, oh, I need to be consuming more protein because I don't absorb protein well. And I didn't know if there was actually any truth to that whatsoever, or it's just someone trying to create the idea in their head that they do need more protein than they actually need, which, as we know, after a certain point, it gets wasted anyway. But there has been people that I have known being like, I need this because I don't absorb things well. And I'm like, that's great. Where are you getting this information from also?
Having said that, there are genes to do with your muscle composition.
Okay.
So some people do find it easier to build muscle, but it's not about the protein absorption. It's about how efficiently your muscles can rebuild. And the different types of fibers. So there are genes associated with higher fast twitch or higher slow twitch muscle fibers. And you do find that people with more fast twitch muscle fibers can build muscle faster just because their muscles are more efficient at working. But this is more about how you train rather than how much protein you eat. So if you know this about yourself, then you just train differently.
See, I know you're a runner yourself, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, obviously with the knowing your protein as well, this kind of, I'm guessing, helps with your muscles for your legs and your cardiovascular health as well. So I'm guessing knowing exactly what your body needs and how it works, especially for you, it's very easy to kind of work out exactly where to get these certain nutrients from to perform to the best of your ability as well. Because I'm guessing you tailor your nutrients exactly for your performance of running.
Yes. Oh my God, the biggest game changer for me was, so one of the main things that used to hinder my running was joint pain, knee pain. Oh my God, it was like, it used to be so bad. And then when I tailored my diet to my genes, I pretty much removed omega-6 because I'm very sensitive to omega-6 according to my genes. It means that I more readily convert the omega-6 from foods, from oil, from vegetable oil, from rapeseed oil, from refined foods into inflammatory counterparts. And so, my body was in a constantly inflamed state. I've removed rapeseed oil, which we're told actually is good for you on a vegan diet. I mean, for some people, it's good. For some people, it's really not good. So I removed that, and a lot of all other refined oils apart from olive oil. And I have never had knee pain since then. Then that was years ago. So, it's incredibly interesting how just knowing this one thing about your body and changing it can just revolutionize your sport and your performance.
That's the thing. Like, there's for me, running. That I do a lot of running, and it was just trial and error with foods that were going to give me the energy I needed. Because obviously, if you look on a piece of paper in black and white, lentils and sweet potatoes and other potatoes should give me the energy I need to run. Whereas when I was trialing a different one each day, they weren't. Well, not so much like lentils and stuff, but chickpea, like lentils give me a huge amount of energy. Sweet potato, huge amount of energy. Chickpeas as such do not. Although they have the same near enough composition of how they're built structurally with their proteins and their carbs and that. Whereas chickpeas just didn't do it for me. And is this down to how your body obviously takes in different foods, but is that down to genetics?
some people are better at burning carbohydrates than others, that's for sure. Whereas some people are much better at getting into a fasted state. So like going into ketosis, basically, when you run fasted. When it comes to the difference between lentils and chickpeas, I would imagine this is more down to your microbiome, because, chickpeas are one of the harder ones to digest from a food matrix perspective. So I wonder if actually that is something to do with your gut bacteria levels, that you weren't as able to efficiently digest and absorb the energy from the chickpeas that you were from the lentils.
The thing, I do go through phases of just testing foods just for my performance, to see what works best for me, what gets me my new personal bests, and just kind of what's really fueling me. And there's some amazing foods that do it, but there's some foods I just eat and I go for a run, I'm just like, off it from, just this is not working for me whatsoever. Like, I know I'm going to fail with this one. Well, not so much fail, but I know I'm not going to finish, because my energy storage it's being wiped out. So just for you personally, what are your top foods for your pre-run?
Good question. So usually I have quite a high fat and carb breakfast, actually high protein as well, so all of them. And I do that usually like about 4 or 5 hours before my run. So I'll have beans, tofu, and soya milk, and chia seeds, and some sort of grain, and some berries and other fruit and peanut butter, and like have a nice mashed up breakfast. And then I find, for me personally, that loading up on getting enough healthy fats is incredibly important. But according to my genes, I'm also much better at adapting to a fasted state as well. So it kind of makes sense. And then, about half an hour before, maybe I'll have a piece of fruit. Maybe I will, I'll have some simple carbohydrates, maybe some whole grain bread, maybe some potatoes and something, whatever is lying around, basically. Usually there's some leftovers from yesterday in our fridge. Yeah, and then after that, it's just about eating something quickly, because I found in the past that it was easy for me to delay eating, but then I was also getting a lot of injuries. And since I've been eating much sooner after I finish my runs, especially long runs, it's much better. And what you really want to do is get like a good ratio of carbs and protein, and I found that's very, very helpful for me. So yeah, for me it was more about getting more fats, which is not what you would expect, but I find that gives me the most sustainable energy.
To me, that's the thing. Like, whenever I play around, fatty foods really just don't play great with me. Actually, saying that, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm going to go to the gym, fatty foods give me a lot more energy than, let's say, my carbs. Whereas if I'm on my run, a carb is really, as you would imagine, giving me that energy I need. But like the fatty foods beforehand, for the gym, really kind of power me through like a weighted workout. So it's just kind of really playing with what your body loves, what it hates, and kind of getting to know how your body works. And I'm guessing this is the same with genes as well. You need to know exactly how your genes are working, and obviously that is what you do. So this is where Vojo Health comes in. So tell us about Vojo.
Yeah, so my company is Vojo, and the mission is really to help people, vegans and vegetarians, and anyone on a plant-based diet, understand their body and make sure they're getting the nutrients they need to achieve their goals. Usually that is in fitness and in weight management, and just generally feeling great in your body. My personal mission is to make sure that nobody gives up on a vegan diet, and to inspire other people to go vegan too by just being amazing. So yeah, we do that through DNA testing. And when you do a DNA test, which is literally just a saliva swab, My favorite thing to say is that it's easier than doing a COVID test because it's just a saliva swab of your cheek rather than your brain. So yeah, it's just a saliva swab, and then you get all this information about yourself, like which nutrients work better for you, which foods work better for you. We even do reports on sleep and stress and what kind of day structure and lifestyle works for you. And it's not set in stone, it's a starting point to play around with and figure out what works for you, but it just takes away so much trial and error. So yeah, that's how it works.
I had a little look on the website earlier, and then you do have a full breakdown of everything that you get back, and it's very easy to read as well. It's very in depth, but breaks down kind of all your needs in the best way for everybody to read as well. So it's not just a load of kind of scientific lingo which nobody's going to understand. It's very much dumbed down is not the best way to word it, but for everybody to read. It's very simple and so in depth.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point giving people information that they can't understand, right? It's about what's important is that you make the changes in your diet and your lifestyle which work for you.
That's perfect. That's the thing. Like, I think once people have this information, they can readily in front of them, they can make those changes, whereas otherwise it is a lot of just kind of playing around, seeing what works for them, and what they think may be working for them might not be, and later on down the line it's going to really kind of affect them in some way, shape or form. So I'd say it's probably a good idea to go get one of these one of your DNA tests.
Of course I would agree with you.
Exactly that. So we're going to round this off in a second, but before you go, the one thing I like to ask everybody is, so when you've had a long day and you really can't be asked to cook, but you have to, and you had to throw something together that's nutritious, quick and simple, but very nutritious at the same time, what is your go-to meal?
Can I say chocolate?
You can say
it's not a meal, but my go-to thing, if I can't bother to do anything else, is chocolate. But I feel like I have to justify this. There are a lot of health benefits to dark chocolate. I have a whole blog on it on my website. I've collated all of the evidence, and there is a lot of it for all of the benefits of dark chocolate, including on your cardiovascular health, your brain health, your sport, everything. So before you judge me, go and read
it. I will definitely go check that out, because if anything, if I need an excuse to find and eat dark chocolate, I will find that excuse, and you've given me that excuse now. So I will definitely be checking that out later.
Good. I'm here for you.
Where can we find you?
So everywhere on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, etc. Vojo is Vojo Health, one word. If you want to connect with me personally on Instagram, and it's a lot more about running and nutrition, that's at My Vegan Genie. Don't ask me about the name, it's just kind of random and it's stuck.
When I saw that your Instagram name was My Vegan Genie, I assumed it was to do with genes and you being vegan.
Yeah,
I'm hoping
exactly.
I'm hoping that's the reason, because at first I read it, I was like, genie, as in lamp, and then and then it correlated between. I was like, now I get it.
Yeah, see, I feel like it's the twist in the story when you get to know what I'm posting about. So at first you think genie in the lamp, and then you're like,
Exactly. Well, Ellie, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk to us.
It was so much fun. Thank you.